Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of That's a Great Question, where we look at great questions found in the Bible, their backstories, and what we can learn from them. Today, we're going to be looking at, actually, we're at episode 6 already. So, and the question we'll be discussing is, did God really say you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? Wow. So this story takes place in the garden of actually the Garden of Eden and paradise, if you will. And it's Adam and Eve, and they have everything they need, and they're on this never-ending vacation, if you can imagine that. We've all probably been on vacations to where after that 2 or 3 days or that week period, we know it's coming to an end, and we know we have to get back to regular life and work and hustle and bustle and all that or whatever. But that wasn't the case for them. They had an eternity stored in store for them with total bliss, everything they needed, all expenses paid, no sickness, no death, none of that stuff. But there was just one prohibition. Let's read in Genesis 2:15 through 17 to see what that is. The Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it. And the Lord God commanded the man, "You are free to eat from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. For when you eat from it, you will certainly die." God was very specific here in the text as far as what the expectation was, that command, and what the consequence would be if Adam violated that command. So Adam was given a caretaker role of this beautiful garden, and I just imagine it just having all types of springs and trees everywhere, and if you could just imagine the most beautiful garden, and that they can eat of any other tree except that one. Have you ever wondered why God put that tree there? I certainly have. And I think one of the reasons why is it was a test of Adam's loyalty and trust. And I believe that in order for there to be true loyalty, there has to be an opportunity for disloyalty. There has to be free will. And so by putting that tree in the garden, God gave Adam and Eve the free will in hopes that they would trust. Let's read on in Genesis 3:1 through 5. Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, "Did God really say, 'You must not eat from any tree in the garden?'" The woman said to the serpent, "We may eat from the trees in the garden, but God did say, 'You must not eat fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it, or you will die.'" "You will not certainly die," the serpent said to the woman, "for God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." So we see here the serpent comes on the scene. And one thing that we're told about the serpent is that he's supremely crafty. And so the first thing he does is he gets Eve to question, did God really say that? Did God really say that? And so Eve was very clear on what God said. So she says, yes, God did say that. He said not to touch this tree in the middle of the garden, and we can have all these other trees. But then comes a second scheme, very subtle here. Did God really mean that? And so you see that there's just a very just conniving underminingness of God's what God said and what He meant. And that's usually what happens in situations like this, is that Satan begins to undermine the fullness of God's will. And he began to really sow seeds in Eve's mind that, hey, God is withholding something worthwhile to you. You know, you lack something. You need something else in order to really make this paradise. And as a matter of fact, if you eat this fruit, then your eyes will be open. You will be like God. You won't lack anything. You'll have all this knowledge of good and evil. You'll be self-sufficient, and God doesn't want you to do that. He's holding that back from you because for whatever reason. And here's a mistake here, guys, that we can make sometimes. And just like Eve, is she begins to really deliberate with this serpent. And if you notice, the longer that we have that conversation about right and wrong, the weaker we get and the more likely we're willing to give in. And it's like exercise. And one of the things that I found really helpful for me is to set my alarm clock on the days that I know I need to exercise. And I get up when that alarm clock goes off. I don't hit snooze. I don't allow myself any excuses. And just because that's what it takes. Because I know that the longer I lay in that bed and I hit snooze or whatever, I am not going to get up out of that bed after a while. So here we see that this serpent deceives Eve, and she begins to believe this lie and to believe that God is withholding something worthwhile from her. Let's continue reading in Genesis 3:6-13. When the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it. She also gave some to her husband, who was with her, and he ate it. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they realized they were naked. So they sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves. Then the man and his wife heard the sound of the Lord God as he was walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and they hid from the Lord God among the trees of the garden. But the Lord God called to the man, "Where are you?" He answered, "I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid." And he said, "Who told you you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree that I commanded you not to eat from?" The man said, "The woman you put here with me, she gave me some fruit from the tree, and I ate it." Then the Lord God said to the woman, "What is this you have done?" The woman said, "The serpent deceived me, and I ate." So here we see the direct result of just this, what discontentment does. And it just reminds me of just these, sometimes, especially now that we're approaching the holidays, just some of the ads that go out, and how those ads are really just very innovative, because it makes us feel like we have to have that, whatever it is that they're advertising. See, Eve lost her sense of gratitude and contentment, and she wanted more, and that set her up to be enticed. And you notice here that she continues to just consider this idea, and she's seen that this fruit is good for food and that it's edible, and she's thinking it's going to be delicious. This is going to satiate me more than that other fruit. And so she bites. She looks at the fruit tree and sees that it's pleasing to her eye. So there begins lust and desire for this fruit. And then thirdly, gaining wisdom. It appeals to her pride. Hey, I don't have to be a creature. I can be like God himself. I can have more. And so the immediate consequences is that their eyes are open, and they're exposed, and they're vulnerable, and they're insecure for the first time, and they're trying to hide from God and hide from each other by covering themselves up with fig leaves. And then begins the shame and the blame, to where they start blaming each other. And unfortunately, this story has a very tragic ending, a very sad ending. Let's read on in Genesis 3:22-24. And the Lord God said, "The man has now become like one of us, knowing good and evil. He must not be allowed to reach out his hand and take also from the tree of life and eat and live forever." So the Lord God banished him from the Garden of Eden to work the ground from which he had been taken. After he drove the man out, he placed on the east side of the Garden of Eden cherubim and a flaming sword, flashing back and forth to guard the way to the tree of life. So they ate of this tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And that act of disobedience precluded them from being able to eat any more from the tree of life. I think the takeaway here is that our will is very, very costly when we choose our will over God's will. We see that they're banished from the garden. They are prevented from eating from the tree of life. They forfeited all the provisions. And if you read further on, it talks about just the toil that they would have to endure, and of course, mortality. And the challenge I want to really give you here is to consider, what lies has a serpent been whispering to you lately? What is he using to lure you away from God or to lure you to a state of discontentment to where you take matters into your own hands? And what toll are you paying for that? The good news is that Jesus has reversed this curse that came through Adam and Eve. And if we trust him and obey him, he will restore us. And it won't happen in this lifetime. We'll get that partial restoration in this lifetime. But ultimately, when we're with him in eternity, then that's when we will really have this full restoration of what we lost through Adam and Eve. So if you like this video, I invite you to go ahead and comment. And please suggest any questions for future episodes. Your question may be selected. But I would love to hear from you if you have any feedback or just any thoughts on what you're getting out of this. And of course, if you think someone else can benefit from this, please feel free to share this link with someone else. May God richly bless you and keep you strong in him. Shalom.